Yeah. Now, coach, you highlighted this, and one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you is just because you have such an understanding of that time and the X's and O's of that time. But can you, and we kind of talked about this when we were on the phone, but can you kind of explain to me the progression of X's and O's from the time you started and how different they are today?
Yeah, geez, back in the day, if you were scouting a game, you had number one, you didn't have the ability to uh, watch the tape of the game after it was over.
Mm,
Or you had to file a report basically on what you just observed and the way that the other team identified their plays with the calls and that kind of thing. Uh, you had to go back to the hotel room, write the stuff up, fax it in. There's a fax thing in, and so all that's evolved into the computerized thing. And now, when guys go to scout a game, they basically they have a sheet where they chart the time and the call, and then they can go back to their room and watch the play, and then exactly write the play and put it in the computer and zip it in. So all that from a technology standpoint is totally changed in terms of how the game has been played. I think, yeah, it's basically it's changed a lot since I've been out of it 9 years now. I've been
hmm
retired 9 years,
2013.
but since that time, it seems like the set plays that you see in these books and everything, you don't see them anymore. Like, the fist play, I don't see many teams run those plays. Some teams run no plays. You look back at Houston when D'Antoni was there, guys were spread out. Harden had the ball. Guys were, just play. It was a one-on-one type action. And if you helped on him or you doubled on him, he'd find the open guy and he'd make his shot or he'd make his play. And that's kind of how a lot of teams play. Not totally that way, but they play in a system that allows for individual one-on-one type action. And I think part of it is when the rules changed. When I first started out, it was a physical league.
Hmm
I watched the bad boys in Detroit where they said the NBA is no babies allowed. You go down the lane, they're going to knock you down. And so when they guarded, they had a hand on you. You could put a hand on a hip, and you could steer a guy, and you could move them. And now those are fouls. So what happens is you have to you got to keep your feet in front of you. These guys are so good, it's tough to do that. So if you help, now you got guys spotted up for three. So it's really changed, and the talent level has really improved also. Uh, when I started with the Pacers, we had Rick Smits on a low block. Was Sal Thompson was on a block. Those were not, now you got stretch fours, you got stretch fives now. So the games has changed in terms of how the personnel is used these days. So it's totally evolved. Uh, like I say, the book I've got here, I don't see many of those plays used anymore.
hmm And then, yeah, like you said, coach, it's funny you mentioned that. So I talked to Coach Burke a couple days ago, and after my interview with him, he texted me and he goes like, "Matt, I forgot to mention to you because we were talking about like just the degree of difficulty it comes with what Miller going through these screens, stopping on a dime, and knocking down these shots so efficiently." He's like, I forgot to mention, Matt. You have to remember that every time he's going through these screens, somebody's hitting him. They are messing up his rhythm, and he has to find a way to not be disrupted and still score. And it's just like, obviously there's a lot of stuff that makes today's game a little more challenging in some aspects, but back then, especially when you're like a frailer guy like Miller, and shooters, they need rhythm. Rhythm is like what they live and die off of, ritual, all that stuff. But to have that constant disruption and to still be a 40+% 3-point shooter is just insane to me.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And that, watching the coaches teach. When I watched
Mhm.
Detroit way back in the day, Ronnie Rothstein was one of the assistants, and I learned a lot from him defensively. And that's basically what they did. You're not going to let the guy run. He gets in the lane, give him one way to go. Don't get on top of him where he can go right or left. But give him one way, get physical, and move him. And if he comes off the screen, Lambier, you'll get a blast on that guy. Put a shot on him. And if they hit two or three shots, be ready to knock them down. And those were kind of that was kind of the mentality back in the day, where it was a physical game.
Yeah, you mentioned two players that I just want to talk about really quickly. One, Rick Smits. Just to me, he had an incredible low post game, first of all, but he was also a really good jump shooter. I feel like he would be a pretty fun like stretch five in today's game. I think he'd do really well. And then another guy I just wanted to mention who I've fallen in love with over the last couple of weeks is I love Chuck Person's game. He had the coolest nickname, the Rifleman. He was a great 3-point shooter. He was big. He played good defense. I want to hear what your thoughts were coaching those two guys.
You know, interesting with Chuck, he had a great aptitude and knowledge of the game and what was happening on the floor.
Mhm.
Uh, I would, after games, I might say something during a game, and he would disagree or something, and then I would go back and look at the film and the tape, and I'd come back the next day, man, you were 100% right. He knew exactly
Uh-huh.
what was happening, how it was happening, and what needed to be done. But yeah, he had a toughness about him, and another guy, the Rifleman, could shoot it, no doubt about it. He was a good player, and a very smart player.
Mhm. You guys just had a lot of like throughout the 90s. I know you weren't a part of that staff for the whole 90s, but just so many deep teams, like maybe top end it wasn't the Pistons or the Bulls at their peak, but like just such a deep team, such a well-coached team. And you guys had some of the best X's and O's, I think, during the time. But yeah, just a fun era of basketball. I want to ask you, coach, you got to um, during your time be a part of two, I think, pretty important series in NBA history. You get that 91 series against the Boston Celtics, game five, Larry Bird's famous injury, comes back in, and it's like one last like hurrah for him in the Garden. He has an incredible second half performance. And then in 93, of course, the beginning of the Knicks Pacers saga. Can you tell me what it's like to be in the war room, in the trenches of these really important, um just like a smorgasbord of just all-time names in the midst of these things?
Yeah, it was. When you're back coaching in high school, and
Mhm.
you're watching the Celtics play on TV, and you see the Garden. You're watching the games in the Garden. Then you get there and you say, "Man, this thing is the place is a dump." I
Mhm.
mean, the locker room is terrible, and all those stories
No
you
AC.
are. Oh yeah, oh yeah. They take care of you good there. The Reds ghost was hovering around, but anyway, uh, that first one you talk about, I remember that last game where I believe we kind of had a lead. I mean, we were in the game. It was a heck of a game going, and then Bird had those back issues,
Mhm.
and he left the game, went in the locker room getting taken care of, and all of a sudden I heard a roar, and I never heard a roar that loud in any arena before or after. He came back out of the locker room to back to the bench, and the place went absolutely crazy. And then they pulled it out and won the game in the series. But yeah, watching those guys, just amazing, amazing stuff. And listening to those guys on the court.
Mhm.
You talked about Chuck Person, and I remember we were playing a game there right before Christmas, and you got McHale, you got Parrish, you got Bird. I mean, what a team that was. So Larry Bird is right in front of our bench with Chuck Person guarding him, and he makes a post feed in to McHale in the post, and Chuck goes down to double the post, which
Mhm.
not going to leave Larry Bird, but he did. So anyway, McHale immediately kicks the ball back out as Chuck is desperately running to get to the Bird. Larry goes, "Merry Christmas, Chuck," and just buries the three. So those are are things that these guys, the confidence and that these guys have, and the ability to produce is just amazing. But he's one in a million, no doubt.
Yeah, no, I agree. I remember, I was watching game 5 actually this morning, and I remember when Bird checks in, it's like a timeout, I think, in between, and, like, literally the Garden is, like, on their feet the entire time out, just cheering him on. Like they like I've never seen like a fan base just look at like a figure in reverence the way they did. Just I know this is outside the point we're getting lost on the Miller dialogue, but I've got to know because Bird's one of the first guys I ever really scouted once I got into X's and O's. Just is he is as good like as advertised, right?
No doubt about it. No doubt.
Mhm. That's awesome. Now, Coach, we've kind of, like I said, we've kind of moved away from the Miller subject a little bit, but back to Miller. You've coached a lot of guys. Is Miller? He's the best shooter you've ever coached, right?
Yes, yeah,
Hmm.
no question, no question about it. We had some other guys that were close. I had Jamal Crawford a couple times
Hmm.
in Portland and with the Clippers. Uh, he might be, not in Reggie's league, but very good, excellent, instant offense off the bench. Uh, I'm trying to think. You can't beat Reggie.